Today's discussion is the 5-bucket method to calculating shop costs. This is kind of something I've invented, as I've used it for a couple years when I coach shops, and I think it really helps people kind of get a grasp on how to run their business better and understand what it takes to really look at the data. And so it's really great. So let's just get going. All right, so my name is Marshall Atkinson, and you can always reach me at marshall@inksoft.com, and my phone number is 480-351-0740. If anything during this webinar, or really any other challenges that you guys might have, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Some of the stuff, I'm just, especially for this webinar, I'm really doing things in a very basic way. And every shop is run different. You guys have different customers, you're in different areas. You might be a screen printer or an embroiderer or have heat press or DTG or whatever. Everybody runs things kind of differently. So I'm doing today's webinar is really just about basic, broad things. So, just take that with a grain of salt. So today's objective, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you some simple, easy to implement ideas to understand and control your shop costs. We're going to look at overhead, consumables, labor, energy, and the best one of all, which is profit, okay? Which is what we're all in business to make money, so this is really important to discuss. So let's get going. So we're going to apply what we understand today about the buckets, and at the end of the webinar, we're going to create a really simple price list. This is just the easy way of doing it, and I know that these numbers aren't your numbers, but it's a really easy way to understand how to take your shop costs and make a price list that makes sense. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that. If you're not an expert at Excel, I swear I'll go slow. And then I can always help you with this afterwards also. So first off, what is a bucket? It's not the metal thing in your shop. Essentially, we're gathering all of your shop's costs and grouping them into buckets. So it's really kind of like a group, okay? So for this discussion, we're going to look at those 4 main things: overhead, consumables, labor, and energy. Okay, what we want you to do is go back 5 years. If you've only been in business for 3, just go back 3 years. It's okay. So what we want to do, though, is we want to establish history, because when we understand our history, we can understand what's going on, our rate of growth. We can start looking at things that make sense. Do you spend more money in August than you do in January? Usually, when we understand this stuff, we can project what we might have happen for the future. But we have to understand our history first, okay? And then what we're going to do is we sort each of these different 4 things into a different bucket for the different months based on the invoice date. And it's okay if you pay, you got invoiced in March and you paid it in April. We're just going to use the invoice date for our discussion, okay? So just use the invoice date or the date that you bought it. So if you bought something from Amazon, you didn't get an invoice, but you need to do it on the month that you bought that thing, and we're going to put it in the different bucket. Okay, we're going to record everything onto a spreadsheet in one cell, and then we're going to use that to calculate our costs. Okay, so here's the beginnings of a spreadsheet. So for this is just a mythical shop. I made up these numbers, so don't think that could be you, okay? And this was something I did. I share a spreadsheet that there's a URL that I'm going to share later, so you can be able to actually see this. This was my fictional shop for 2013. So looking at it, you can see that their overhead is generally it's the same every month. But their consumables change, the labor costs change, and the energy changes depending on what month it is. And you can see that the total costs for each month change, but they add up to, 60 grand at the end of the year. So if you look at each month, January's in row B, that's vertical row B, and it goes all the way through the year, and the total is in column, excuse me, not row, it's column B, and then the total is in column M, so vertically you can see how everything lines up. The spreadsheet that I share has it all automatically calculated with the formulas, so you can use it and you can just put your numbers in and it'll total everything for you. Just as a point of verification, I wrote a blog article about this that's available on the InkSoft website. It's it's like 2 months back, so just go back and you can find it. It's called the 5-bucket method also, and if you'd like to read it, you can get that there. And that also includes the link to the spreadsheet. So let's just move forward a little bit and let's talk about impressions, okay? Because that's one of the things that we want to talk about. An impression is a decoration location on the garment. And a lot of people get confused about, is that the number of colors or the number of colors in the print or number of colors on the embroidery? No, an impression is just the decoration location. So for a front and back print, that counts as 2 impressions. So what we want to do is we want to, just like your costs, you go back those 5 years, and for each month, you need to calculate how many impressions that you printed. Now this is the unit of work that you did. So what we're going to do is we're going to get their cost per impression for each of the 5 buckets. So what we need to understand is how much you actually did. So we want to pull the total number of impressions for each month, for each year, so everything looks correct. Okay? And then you can segregate this into your different decoration types too. So if you screen print, embroider, you do heat press, you got DTG, you do sublimation, you have a cylindrical press. I mean, whatever you do, measure that for each group, and then we're going to throw that onto a spreadsheet. So that's going to look just like this. So it's the same spreadsheet we used originally, okay? And then what we've done now is we've added in our columns there, embroidery, screen printing, heat press, and DTG. And you can see in 2013, they were only screen printing in my fake shop here. Okay, so later on, we're going to add these different decoration types, and you can see how that's going to change all their numbers. Okay, for right now, we're just looking at this one thing. All right, so you can see how the number of impressions for column B for January, right? So they had those consumable costs, and they had 9,753 impressions for that month. Okay, and we're going to use that in a minute. So let's talk about overhead. So overhead is your common recurring expenses. Usually these are the same costs for each month. Okay, so your rent or mortgage is usually always the same unless you have moved into a new building or whatever. Your phone could be the same. A lot of times it's just you pay a blank fee, right? Your website, including or InkSoft hosting fees, usually is about the same. So maybe you've got a GoDaddy account, or you're using InkSoft. Hopefully you are, or you're doing something else. That's just a fee. Marketing, insurance, and of course, a lot of people always put their salaried employees in with their overhead because you're paying that guy 30 grand a year, or that manager 50,000 a year, or whatever it is, or maybe you pay yourself a salary. That's included in the overhead. Some people do it that way. Some people put their labor for their salary employees in the labor bucket. It doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent. Okay, I tend to put the salary people in the labor bucket, but that's okay. If you want to put it in overhead, that's fine. Okay, and then you can also include your equipment payments, any type of stuff that you're always doing. Okay, so all that goes into your overhead. So let's just throw some numbers at this. So $1,245 could be the rent. $125 could be your phone, $250 could be your website. Maybe you spend $85 a month on pay-per-click marketing. Your insurance could be $200, and for salary, we're not touching that, all right, for this example. So add all that up, it's $1,905, right? And we printed for the month, 23,457. So that could be 8 cents an impression. So 8 cents would be your average overhead cost per impression for this particular month. Okay, hopefully you're following along. If you're not, I'll explain some more later. You can also, there's a question thing, just shoot me some questions and I will happily answer them at the end of the presentation. So be sure to do that. So let's talk about other buckets. Other buckets, let's start off with consumables. You're going to calculate your other costs buckets the same way. For example, consumables, you've got an ink vendor, a couple ink vendors, and you're spending whatever you're spending a month. You order some boxes from Uline. You maybe order some parts from Granger. You went to Home Depot and bought some citrus cleaner to use on your press. Maybe you ordered some parts from your equipment vendor, and then you ordered some stuff from Amazon. And so for this particular month, you spent $2,001.11. Okay? Using the same number of impressions, your cost per impression for consumables would be 9 cents. Okay, so you got 8 cents in overhead and 9 cents in consumables. The labor is going to look the same way, right? So you pay Fred, Susie, Mary, and Tom, and Bill, and that adds up to about $9,500. Using the same number of impressions for this month would be 41 cents. So 41 cents is your average labor cost per impression for that month. Same way of energy. You got your electric bill, water bill, sewer, natural gas. If you use propane for your forklift, you could throw that in there too. So for this example, okay, it's $532.20 divided by the number of impressions means it's 2 cents for your energy. Okay, so So that is a way you can calculate all four of your consumable, labor, overhead, and all those buckets all add up. Okay, but the thing that we want to talk about now is your profit bucket. Okay, this is something that I want to talk to shops. A lot of times we don't account for our profit, and this sometimes is just a kind of a wacky way of doing it. And so what we want to do is we want to look at maybe just like when you pay yourself, you put some money aside in your savings account. Essentially, this is the same way of doing it. I know you're marking up your goods, and I know you've got your price list where you're adding your profit into that. This is just an easy way of remembering to pay yourself or your shop first. Okay? If you don't want to do it this way, that's okay. So it's just strategic thinking about a great way to get a chunk of money at the end of the year. We want to have a reasonable goal. So if you're a one-person shop, you don't want to say your profit's going to be $1 million. Just make sure it makes sense. And then here's our example. We want to make a goal of $50,000 for at the end of the year. We think that's going to be a reasonable goal, okay? Based on historical numbers, remember you pulled all those from years on end, it looks like, based on our growth rate, that we could probably hit 345,000 impressions at the end of the year. So it's just easy math. $50,000 divided by 345,000 is 14 cents. So 14 cents is our profit bucket cost per impression. So every time we print a shirt, 14 cents of that is going to go into this profit bucket, and then you can just, as you go, every month take that out and throw it into a savings account or that type of stuff, and that way at the end of the year you'll have $50,000. It's just an easy way of doing it. Again, if you don't want to do it that way, it's okay. It's fine by me. So let's add it all up. Okay, so we've got our overhead at 8 cents, we've got our consumables at 9 cents, labor's at 41, energy's at 2, and then we've got our profit at 14. So 74 cents is our total cost per impression. Okay, so maybe that's really low for you. Maybe it's incredibly high. This is just our fictional shop. Yours is going to be different because it's going to be based on your actual costs and your actual units of work, how many impressions you made. Okay, so for our example, 74 cents is just, what we're using. Okay, so let's go back to our spreadsheet. So at the bottom, you can see the spreadsheet that I'm sharing with everyone. It's just a tiny URL. It's just an easy thing that you can download and you can play with it. So please do so. If you don't write this down and you forget, if you just email me at marshall@inksoft.com and I'll send it to you. Happy to do so. Okay. So let's look at our January column. That's column B. So we've got our overhead, consumables, labor, energy. We've got our total costs. We got our number of impressions. This is updated with, because they have more equipment. Okay. So I just kind of faked that out a little bit. We've got our monthly totals. 8, 9, 41, 2. Our monthly cost per impression is 60, and we're adding our numbers in. And so it's just a different way of doing it. And so it's a great way of kind of understanding everything. So when we have graphs, okay, we can do visuals. So what we want to do is we want to graph the information that helps you visualize the data. Okay, we can show multiple years or months on the same graph, and that can predict trends. So what we want to do is look for points that are very high or very low, and kind of ask ourselves what's going on with that. So let's, and then can we change anything? So let's look at our graph. So this is something, remember this is from our data that we just did, and each of these colored lines is a different year. So starting with 2013 in blue and going all the way to this year in purple, you can see that our costs get lower really as we get busier, but also we have some peaks, we have some valleys. What's going on with this? So you can really see that in the winter months, we use more energy because the heat's on. Okay, during the summer, we don't use as much energy, so things tend to be a little lower. And so what you want to do with this type of stuff is really look at it and predict what are we doing that we can change to make sense to lower our costs. And then when we're keeping track of this stuff, when we graph it, we can see if our work is making sense or not. And we can do that with also our cost per imprint. So you can see on this graph, everything starts off high at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and in the middle, it's lowering out a little bit. So what's happening here is we tend to get busier, our cost per impression goes down, but when our costs are higher, maybe we're not as busy, we're using more labor, we're also using more energy, and what happens is stuff spikes, and then how we react to that really makes a huge difference. For example, look at the green line where it was 52 cents, and you can see that was our average for the year. You can see when we go from August to September, we really slow down, but our costs go up. That really makes a huge spike. So if you're in July and you kind of know that maybe our costs might go up, you can start thinking about what are we going to do with our labor? What can we do with our energy? Do we really need to buy a big bucket of ink? Or, what can we do to make sure that our costs stay level? And when you do stuff like that, it really helps you kind of understand where you are. Okay, so how can we use costs? Okay, first thing is always, you're going to build a price list so it makes sense. So what we want to do, the whole purpose of this exercise is to understand how our costs happen over time, and then we're going to use our price list to predict growth. We're going to use our price list to, our cost to predict growth. We're going to use our cost to predict our price list. So we actually, when we charge for the work that we do, they actually are not going to be under, so we end up making money. Okay, so that's kind of our big deal. We want to investigate ways to lower costs. When we track progress, we ensure our success. So what this means is when we're putting stuff on a spreadsheet, we're using a graph, and we can see, does the work that we do, does it end up saving us money? So we can, when we add an employee to make sure we're more efficient, our labor costs go up, but does it make sure that we get more out per day or per week? When you track this stuff, you can have that hypothesis and you can prove that it works or not. when we change to a different emulsion, when we stop using masking tape, when we an ink, maybe we change your ink to a different manufacturer because they claim that it produces more shirts per gallon. You can see, does our consumable costs go down? This is all that work will show up when we start measuring all of our costs. Predictive future, use graphs to plan. Okay, so when you're looking at things over time, you can see that every year we tend to get 12% or 15 or 20% busier. Okay, so how much busier are we going to be? Well, you can't really know for sure, but over the past 5 years, we've always grown at least 15%. So next year, we could grow 15%, which means that our labor might go up, our consumables might go up, and then how can we use that information to kind of gauge what can we do? If we know that we're growing, maybe you can predict, well, you know what? We might need another auto, or maybe we need an auto coder because we need more screens. So when we kind of understand where we are and where we're going, we can use that information to decide on some business decisions. And, otherwise you're just kind of, making it up as you go. You can hold your staff accountable. Data is objective. So if you're graphing stuff, you can say, well, gosh, we really seem to be using a lot more reclaim chemical than we have before. So what's going on? And when you're graphing your consumables, you can see spikes. You can see when usually you have to reorder that stuff every other month, but now it looks like we're reordering that fluid every single month. You can see that they're not mixing it properly and your consumables have gone up, and you can use that data to kind of make sure that your people are doing what they need to be doing. Because a lot of times, especially when we get really busy, we tend to kind of overlook some stuff, and then only when we're using the data do we understand what's going on. Okay, so hopefully I haven't gone too fast with that. Please shoot me a question if I have. I'd love to talk about it a little further. But let's get started at understanding how we can use our costs to build a price list. Okay, so when you understand your costs, it's easier to build price lists at work. Some shops just copy a price list from someone else. This is just an extremely bad practice. So if you do that, please stop, because you might not be making as much money as you should, and this is a bad practice. I know everybody's always talking about we need to be competitive. The shop down the street is charging this, so we need to charge this, okay? But what you might not understand is that shop down the street, maybe their price list is wrong. Maybe they're not making money, okay? So if you're using that assumption that they know what they're doing, that might be faulty information. Also, maybe they are making money. Maybe they're awesome. But you know what? Their costs, their overhead, their consumables, their labor, all of that stuff is completely different than you. And so when we use somebody else's price list, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to make any money. Okay? So it's really kind of a bad practice to use somebody else. Now, when you use somebody else's price list to kind of understand where you need to be, and your costs are way higher and you can't get down to that low, if that's something that you want to do, then you need to use all this data to understand how you can maybe think about lowering your costs, so your price list can make sense, if you follow that. Do your homework and know your costs. So this is where you really need to understand where you've been, and also what's out there for you. Okay, so here's where you can investigate. Maybe you buy ink in 1 gallon buckets, and but you use 10 gallons of white a month. Maybe you need to buy 2 5-gallon buckets, or maybe it makes better sense to buy a 30-gallon drum, because you're going to reduce your cost by maybe $20 a gallon. And then that lowers your costs. It's a higher price to pay right now, but maybe overall for the quarter or for the year, it drops your price, your cost considerably. So make sure that you're doing your homework on some stuff. And you can reach out to your suppliers. I'm sure they'll help you. Leave room for profit. This is huge on price lists, okay? So you need to really kind of establish what you want to do. How much money should you be making? And then at the end of the year, your profit goal is X. And then if you work the math backwards based on, especially if you use historical data, we should print 345,000 impressions this year. How much profit should we make? And brainstorm on that. And then you can engineer your price list to make sure you're hitting that. If you kind of understand what is your average order, how many screens do you usually do, what is who you're marketing to, that type of, and what are they willing to pay? What do they value you on? Do they value on your creativity, your knowledge of the business, the fact that you make things easier, all that kind of stuff, all kind of adds into what you should be able to charge for things. And then also know that the 5 buckets usually is just an average, okay? It's not an exact thing. It's going to fluctuate all the time. Every month, because your labor is going to be different, your consumables are going to be different, what you get out of your shop every day for impressions is going to be different. So it's going to go up and down. It isn't an exact thing. So that's why you got to look at things over a big chunk of time, over a quarter, over 6 months, over a year, to kind of understand what are your trends, okay? Because things are going to fluctuate a lot from week to week, month to month. So look back over things to make sure you kind of get a good grasp on everything. And that's why we go back 5 years to look for trends, okay? If you haven't been in business for 5 years, that's okay, especially if you're establishing your 5 buckets now. You just want to be able to measure and look at things and kind of reflect from a 30,000 foot view. Okay, and most good price lists are based on time. So that's just basically what I just said. So let's get started creating a price list. All right. So first off, here's a real simple spreadsheet. Okay. So if you look down on row 14, I highlighted in blue, cost per impression. This is where I stuck my 74 cents. So yours could be different. Okay. Maybe yours is 50. Maybe yours is $1.20. I don't know. But this is where you would enter your average cost per impression. You would put that right here, okay? And then the next row 15, I put screen and downtime. So I like to use basically around a third of the cost per impression for this. You can really put anything that you want. I put 27 cents in here. This is for how much I'm going to use to add to my cost per impression for that downtime, for that amount of time that you're using on press, for all those other things that kind of rolled up into that, okay? And you might want to play with this a little bit, but I tend to just use about a third of whatever the cost per impression is. And this, we're going to use this number later on, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you add 74 cents and 27 cents together, that gets you to $1.01. And I put that in row 7 for our mythical shop here, our example shop. They average about 150 impressions for an order, okay? So that's the 144 to 299, okay? So if your average is 80, you would use row 5 for this, okay? What you want to do is the most of what you print for quantity is where you start this price list at, because that's going to be your most common thing. Okay, so for us, it's just going to be 144. So we put $1.01. This is our starting cell. Okay, this is the most important. It's like a keystone. Okay, so the next thing we do is we use we mark it up 20%. Okay, so this is a 20% increase for ordering lower than what our average is. Okay, so don't think of it as a penalty. Just think about, you want people to get to 144, so there's a premium for ordering 96. Okay, and that's 20%. And this is how we're going to go up all the way up to 12. Okay, so when we go all the way up, okay, you can see it's double. Okay, so our formula at the top, you can see, is B7 multiplied by 2. Okay, so that means we've doubled. It's 100% markup. It's $2.02 if we're going to do 12 to 23 in quantity. Okay, so this is a real easy, simple way of doing it. You can your multipliers can be anything. So for here, it's just 20%. So it's times 1.2. Whoop. So for here, it's 2. Okay, these can be anything you want. They can be any percentage. If you want to use 15% for the first one, and you want to use, 2.2 for the row number 3, that's perfectly fine. I'm just using a real simple, 20, 40, 80 a double for my pricing grid here, just so it's a real easy way of doing it. Okay, so everybody follow along with that. Let me know if you don't. And then going down, what we're going to do is we're going to give discounts based on our cost for ordering more. Okay, so here it's just a 5% discount. So you see the formula at the top is just B7 times 0.95. So you give a 5% discount, and it works the same way as ordering less, except you're just giving a discount rather than some sort of premium. Okay, so that fills out the same way, and I'm doing 5, 10, 15, 20% discount as I fill out my price list. So we go from $1.01 to 81 cents. Okay, now this is just our raw costs. We're going to we're going to change our cost per impression to what we really want to price it at in a minute. So I just want to make sure that everybody's following along with how we're calculating this first column. Okay, so let's expand this price list a bit. So what we want to do now is we want to use our number of screens going all the way out to 6. I know that some people have 10, they have 12 screens, whatever. We're just using 6 for this example, just to make it an easy kind of price list to understand. So what we've done is for row 7, which is highlighted in yellow, okay, we went from $1.01 to the next one over for 2 screens is $1.55. So all we did is we used our B15, it's B7, okay, which is our $1 plus B15, which is our 27 cents, multiplied by 2, because it's 2 screens. That formula is at the top. That gets you to $1.55, okay? So going over for 3 screens, 4 screens, 5 screens, 6 screens, you can see it's the same way. All it does is it takes B15 and multiplies it by whatever is in the number of screens row. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screens. That goes all the way across to get you where you need to be for that 6-color job is going to be 641. Okay. Now remember, this is just an example spreadsheet. I know it's not going to match your spreadsheet. Okay. This is just showing you how you can get there. Okay. And then of course we fill everything out. Okay. Using the same, starting off with 20% for $1.21 and 202, and going across, we go all the way for a 6-color for unit of 12 will be $12.82. And that's the same way how we get to $3.53 for a 6-color for 1,000 shirts. Okay. Now again, you can do your formulas any way you want. I just did this so it's real easy math. Okay. I know a lot of people, they discount as they go for higher quantity for number of screens. So it's not just 5%, 10%, 15, 20. It could be 10% for 2 screens and 15% for 3 screens, that kind of stuff. So it makes it more competitive. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. I'm just showing you how you can use this to complete a pricing grid. Okay. Now, here's what we're doing when we add in profit. So instead of 74 cents, we want to go to 95 cents. Okay. So what we're doing is we're adding 21 cents profit. I just made that up. It can be anything, okay? And then this is where our spreadsheet goes now, okay? So now we've used our base spreadsheet. We did our cost per impression, which is 74 cents. We added 21 cents to just one field, one cell, okay? So it was 74, we made it 95, and then what happened is our entire grid changed, so we have accurate price lists using our cost per impression average, which is 74 cents, and you can see that in this price list, we're never losing money, okay? So we actually will be profitable with our decoration fee. Now remember, we're using this, we're already marking up our goods, so you're ordering a G5000 at $1.47, you're going to mark that up 30% or 50% or double it or whatever you do. This gets added to that to form your final price that you would quote your customer for. Okay, so this is just doing the decoration fee part of it. Okay, now how do you use that for embroidery? How do you use that for DTG? How do you use that for other things? This is a simple way of doing it. You can make that finite just for that one idea. You can also have a light color price list. You can do a dark color price list. You can do all kinds of things, but you need to use the data that you're pulling to help you figure that part out. Okay, so it's really important that you understand that you can make this price list work for you any way you want, and how you do that is with using these formulas at the top. Okay, so let's go back to here, where it's just you're starting off at $1.01. Okay, so for different production methods might have a different unit to start with. Okay, so embroidery might be different than screen printing. DTG might be different than screen printing. This is just a base way of doing it and understanding it. Okay, so hopefully you guys follow along with that. If if we're sitting in a group, it'd be easier, I think, than a webinar. But I just kind of want to give you an easy way of calculating that. All right. So let's review real quick, and then I'll get to questions. All right. So do the work and extract the info for each bucket. Segregate by each month and year. So in 2013 in March, how many impressions did you have? How much was your overhead then? How much was your consumables? What did you buy for ink and emulsion and Pellon and thread and press wash and Band-Aids and masking tape and everything that you buy that goes into consumables, right? What was your labor? And then if measuring weekly, okay, because some people want to do that, make sure you're using your labor, how you calculate your payroll, so everything matches up to the same period. Some people, their first day of the week is Sunday. Some people, their first day of the week is Wednesday. So if you're measuring weekly, if you pay people differently, make sure your weeks start on the same days for all of your spreadsheets, so everything lines up with your labor. That's just an easy tip. And then you're measuring your overhead, your labor, consumables, energy, and of course your profit. Okay. Establish your average cost per imprint and use it to calculate your basic price list, and then modify as needed. Okay. So the price list that I shared was just an easy example thing. I know it doesn't match yours, and I keep repeating that because I know I'm going to get some questions on that. So use that to kind of figure out how you do things. Okay, and so it's time for questions. Okay, so I've got a couple already, right? So how are you getting the screen downtime cost? Sorry if I missed that part. Okay, so the screen downtime cost, what I did is I just basically used around a third of what my my cost was. Let's go back to that. So cost per impressions was 74 cents, and I just used 27 cents. Okay, so what I'm using for that is I'm kind of using how much I think I need for screens, and then also my how much it takes me to use for time in the shop. Okay, so I know that I set up around 5 minutes a screen. I can kind of predict what my costs are going to be based on how much labor I'm paying. So I'm kind of using that. I really didn't do a good job of reviewing that. But what you want to think about is what is the amount of money you want to apply to not just your costs, but all the other downtime things that you have, because we're not always running our shops, okay? I mean, running a job. So we've got downtime in between things. So we want to make sure we're accounting for that. So for example, on auto, you've got 3 people. You've got a printer, you've got a puller, and you've got a catcher, and you pay them probably somewhere between $30 and about $35 an hour in total cost. How much impressions do you get for that hour? Okay, so let's say we're running at 400 impressions an hour. So $35 divided by 400 an hour. I'm not quite sure out of my head what that comes out to, but it's not going to be a whole lot of money. And you kind of just want to use that to put that and some other costs that you might want to capture into that cell, and then you're going to add that to your cost per impression to get your total amount. Okay, really I kind of glossed over that, so that's kind of my fault, but hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'm happy to email you some stuff, or actually talk to you on the phone. Or if you like to, we can talk about that offline. Okay, so let's look through some more questions here. I can't read and talk at the same time, so sorry. Will you be sharing your price list spreadsheet too, so we can see the formulas? Hey, I didn't make that available. I totally will do that. If you would like that, Scott Gardner asked that. If you would like that, just email me at marshall@inksoft.com, and I'll send that out to you. It's just a quick spreadsheet. Happy to do so. So I apologize for not making that available in the same folder as that other thing. Let's see. Everybody wants that spreadsheet, evidently. How are you getting? Okay, I just answered that. Say you have a retail shop inside your print shop that does 70% of your business. Would you use the same scenario for figuring out what to sell the retail shirts for? Okay, I guess you really could. For retail, that's a little different because you're not selling it to somebody who's going to have to mark it up. Okay, this is really just about making sure you understand where your costs are for the print side of things. Okay, so for retail, it's really about, think about you're selling. Think about it this way: if you were selling those shirts to yourself, okay, you want to make sure that when you do the print part of it, which is, you still have to do that part, you're making money with it. Okay, and then so if you're selling it to yourself, let's say it's $6 is what you sell it to yourself for, and you want to mark that up to sell retail, and maybe you want to sell that for $18. Okay, does $6 make sense for you? You want to make sure you're still making money for the $6 part. Okay, what you market at retail, that's a whole nother scenario, and I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother different type of theory. So the discussion today was really about just making sure when you do the print part, up to the $6, that you're making money on that. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Next question is it possible to get a recorded video of this for review later? Absolutely. Renee Pedroza asked that. We absolutely will be doing that. I'm recording this both on the app that we use for the webinar, but also with Camtasia. So I'm kind of double recording it. And then probably later today or maybe tomorrow, we're going to post this on our YouTube channel, and we'll send that out with social media, I'm sure. So just look for that. And then if you can't wait, if you want to make sure you see it right off the bat, if you email me, I'll send you the link, and that's marshall@inksoft.com. Okay, so let's go all the way to the end here. So again, here's my contact information. It's Marshall at inksoft.com. My phone number is 480-351-0740. I'm always happy to talk to you guys. I want to help you with your problems. We also do shop coaching. If you get stuck or have a challenge, not just with pricing, but with, how to hire a manager, or I've got an issue with my workflow, or I'm relaying out my shop floor, or you want to learn to be more efficient, I'm happy to coach people on that. Would love to talk to you about how I can help you with that. There is a fee involved with that, but it's, it's a nominal fee, and I think it really helps people. And then also want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're working on a new production manager tool that's really going to help shops manage their day and make sense of their shop schedule. There is a link right here, inksoft.com/production-manager, where you can go. If you haven't signed up already, I suggest you go. You can get the latest news on that as we're building things. But more importantly, there's a section there where you can enter your top 3 problems that you are currently having, and this information goes straight to our development team, because we want to make sure that we're solving your problems with the tool that we're building. So it's a great way to do that, and we love to hear your comments, and we want to know how our tool can solve your problem. So inksoft.com/production-manager, and just send us your ideas, and we would really help. We'd really love that. I can't talk today for some reason. Sorry. All right. Is there any other questions I haven't asked? All right. Why do you not factor the number of colors when collecting your costs and impressions? Obviously, it costs more to print 2 colors than it does 1. We do factor that in. So at the top of our spreadsheet, we've got the number of colors going. That's for the price list. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. So the number of colors really doesn't matter, because at the end, it's all about averages. Okay. So what we're trying to establish is we're measuring how much ink, of course, we're using. You had to pay for mesh. You had to pay for your emulsion. You had to pay for your labor. We're measuring that over the giant 30,000 chunk view of time. Okay. So we're not doing things granularly where we're just looking at the tiny, minute detail. We're looking at basically normalizing all of our costs and just boiling it down to these raw facts. So it's all about averages. So if we say for June, last month, how much did you print and what were your costs? It just averages out. When you get into how many screens, how many colors for each job, we know we had colors, we used the ink, we used the screens, we had setup. What we want to do is we want to look at how we can make things more efficient, because if we're printing instead of 10,000 impressions, let's go to our spreadsheet here. Bear with me. Oh. So here's our spreadsheet. So we go back to our spreadsheet and we can see that, let's find a month where we had more impressions. Okay. For on this spreadsheet, look at July. So that's column H. Okay. We had 37,810 impressions. For screen printing, they did 26,800 impressions. Okay. So our cost per imprint was 45 cents because we got more done than in January. Okay. Where we only did 20,467 impressions for screen printing. Okay. So you can see that even though all of our consumables and labor and energy, it was all different. Okay. Because we did more work. Okay. Our cost per impression was 46 cents. What we're doing is we're normalizing the work into just raw data that we can use for a graph and we can use to make sense out of things. Because when we do more work, our costs are going to be lower because it's the same, the lights are on for the same amount of time. Our overhead is the same because we just paid the rent or the mortgage, but we did more work. So our Overhead, as you can see, in June was 5 cents. In January was 8 cents because we did more work. So our costs go down. So it's the same way with the number of colors because we know we're doing stuff. Okay. It doesn't really matter how many colors jobs had. It just matters that we did something. And that's kind of what we want to do. And if, so for example, if you concentrate on your downtime, for example, so let's say it takes you 7 minutes a screen to register a job. If you can get that down to 5 minutes a screen, okay, you save 2 minutes a screen. So on average, that might mean you're getting 4 or 5 more jobs out a day. So at the end of the week, maybe you printed another 12,000 impressions. That's going to show up in this column because you've done more work for that month with the same amount of labor, with the same amount of overhead, with the same amount of energy. So what happens is our costs go down because our efficiency goes up. Okay, so John Geeson asked that. So hopefully, John, I've answered that question. If not, shoot me an email or give me a phone call. I'd love to talk to you about that. And let's take a couple more seconds to see if there's any more questions. Everybody says I've been helpful, so thank you to everybody who's replied. I really appreciate your comments. More stuff about the spreadsheets. Yes, the spreadsheets is available. You can go to this email at the bottom of your screen right now to get this spreadsheet. I didn't make the price list one available, so if you want that, just email me, marshall@inksoft.com. And I think that's about it. Nobody else has any more questions. Okay. So somebody says, hey, let's say you're a newer shop and don't have impression data. Could you use a target number? The answer is, this is Mike Johnson asking this. The answer is yes. You can use target numbers, but I would be really wary of that because you could say, hey, I'm going to print 10,000 impressions and you only sell 3 jobs at 500 a piece. Okay. So you're way off. Okay. So if you want to predict what you're going to do, that could probably work. But just be wary of the data and be super suspicious of it. Don't lead yourself down a hole by making assumptions that you're going to hit these numbers. So historical data is great. I would maybe think about using very conservative numbers. So if you say you're going to close, 20 deals next month, okay, maybe you only, on your spreadsheet, only put down 5 or 6 just because, you want to use stuff that's really going to make sense because what we're trying to do is we're trying to predict our costs. At the same time, we're trying to use those costs to make a price list. Okay, so hopefully that helps you, but as you go, you can always put your real numbers in, okay? So maybe you can start that way and just highlight your fake numbers and say, hey, these were really fakey. They probably won't work. And then as you do work, put the real numbers in, okay? And then you can see and you can adjust and maybe that helps you. So hopefully that answers your question. So let's see if there's anything else. I got like 5 minutes here. Somebody had trouble logging in. They were an anonymous attendee, so thanks for not registering your name. But will this be archived somewhere? Yes, we'll be sharing this on our YouTube channel. I'll be publishing that, or actually my marketing guy, Ryan, will be publishing this probably later today or maybe tomorrow. So look for that. And of course, if you don't see it or you want it as soon as it comes out, just email me at marshall@inksoft.com and I'll happily shoot it over to you. All right, well, great. So thanks, everyone, for your time today. I love helping you guys. I know this is super complicated for some people. I'm happily walk you guys through this. If you build your price list and you get stuck or you have Excel problems or your graphs don't work or whatever, just shoot them over to me. I'll happily look at your formulas. I don't promise immediate turnaround, so because I'm not I'm not, I don't have that much free time, but I would happily help you guys with this because I want you guys to be successful. So, all right. Well, thanks and have a great day and happy printing. Talk to you later. Bye.